Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Today we're joined by Andrew McCausland from Symantec and Helen Murphy here from Bytes Software Services to cover our Symantec NetBackup Appliances webinar.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, good afternoon everyone. So my name's Helen. I work in the Symantec team at Bytes. So why come to Bytes for Symantec? We have benefited from a great partnership with Symantec for many years now, and we are seen as their go-to partner. Bytes are a platinum partner, which is the highest level of partner status afforded to Symantec partners, and this is based on our sales and technical expertise. All of our account managers hold Symantec sales accreditations, and we have a dedicated team of Symantec product and licensing specialists that you can utilize. So as well as our sales accreditations, Bytes are specialized in a number of focused areas. Just to name a couple: data protection with NetBackup, e-discovery and archiving with Enterprise Vault, and we have in-house technical consultants in these areas delivering professional services. So we can assist you from designing your backup environment, implementation and knowledge transfer. We can also run health checks on your current estate, assist with upgrades, cross-grades and migrations. So we'd recommend beginning with a joint workshop session with us to discuss your current environment, and then we can make some recommendations moving on. So thanks again for joining. I'll now pass you over to Andrew, who will be delivering a presentation.
Thank you very much, Helen and Sarah. I'll just share my desktop. Thank you again, Helen and Sarah, and my name is Andrew from McCausland from Symantec. It's my pleasure to introduce NetBackup Appliances, or if you perhaps have some exposure to them, perhaps to update you with NetBackup Appliances during this seminar this afternoon. So what I want to do is just go through a little bit about the NetBackup background, but mostly talk appliances and some recent changes to the appliance lineup that we've brought to market. So just moving on to slide 2. So very briefly, as I'm sure you'll all know, there are a very large number of challenges in IT today, and all sorts of things have become more complicated than they used to be. SLAs are getting tighter. The amount of money you have to deliver the services is becoming lower, and there's more and more different technologies out there that need protecting, and more adventurous ways in which you can back up things. So, for example, using snapshots and agents that can restore individual elements from, for example, a SharePoint database. All of that adds a lot of complexity, and it's quite hard to sort of keep on top of all that complexity, with sort of traditional ways of deploying backup solutions. So that's sort of the background as to why we brought out a series of appliance solutions for delivery of NetBackup solutions. So moving on from slide 2 to slide 3, so what we really did is to replace the building a backup solution yourself based on your own hardware and software, hardware acquisition, applying the NetBackup software suite on top of that hardware. By adopting that approach, which is what's been done in for many years, and it works perfectly well, but it is quite a complicated process, and you are effectively the system integrator, and you're having to develop, maintain, and update a multi-vendor sort of a platform for backup solutions, which can spread across many different machines, different operating systems, and is just generally quite complicated to maintain and keep current and to keep operational. So that's sort of the left-hand side of this slide here, and then on the right-hand side here we show what we've basically done is to introduce an additional platform for NetBackup, which is this appliance solution. It comes in a variety of different flavors, but it's a very simple deployment model. It's really simply a case of deciding which size and I/O options you need for the backup server, then ordering the appropriate machine. The software is pre-installed, and the machine can be delivered and put into production very quickly. You also get you're removing the integration complexity you'd have with a normal type of software deployment. We're giving you a predictable performance level, which is and the machines are very fast, and critically, it's maintained by one single single vendor. So that means that you've got a very simple support process. It's one vendor for all hardware and software issues. And of course the management is simplified because you have a single pane of glass to manage the appliance itself. When NetBackup is deployed on an appliance, it's the identical NetBackup solution to that which is deployed as a software solution. So if you build your own system, it's the same NetBackup. We can interoperate appliance solutions with non-appliance solutions, so these solutions can be added to existing deployments of NetBackup with no integration issues. Your existing policies, your existing procedures and training all still 100% apply, so we don't do anything to negate the existing investment in the solution. And there was a WebEx this morning which Bytes presented with one of my colleagues, and that went through NetBackup 7.6 new features, and NetBackup 7.6 is the version of software we're shipping on the appliances now, so all the features you saw in that webinar, if you attended it or if you're interested in it, if you want to attend it later on as a recording, all those features apply to this NetBackup appliance solution. So we're doing nothing that sort of, we're taking nothing away from the solution. We're not simplifying it or sort of dumbing it down in any way. We're providing a completely functional enterprise class backup solution, but based on a very simple deploy model. So that's sort of a summary of slide 3. Now when we actually supply an appliance, the illustration on slide 4 shows exactly what's in the box. So the box on the left-hand side logically has inside it the items that are shown on the right-hand side here. So the critical things are really that it's optimized and redundant hardware for a backup server solution. So for example, by optimized we mean it's got the right amount of CPU and processing power, memory and I/O for a backup solution, and it's a very competent performing system, as we'll see in a second. Also it has redundant storage. Obviously the device is storing your critical backups, so all the data is stored on RAID 6 RAID arrays, so that means for example that you've got 2 parity disk in the storage, so you'd have to suffer at least 2 disk failures for any data for performance to be degraded, and 3 disk failures with no repair taking place to actually lose data. And as well as redundant storage, the systems have redundant power and redundant fans, and we have multiple I/O ports and things like that, so there's failover of I/O as well. So it's a highly redundant solution. You'll see in the third box up from the bottom we have the Symantec hardened operating system. Under the covers it is a Linux-based appliance, but you don't really need to worry about that. The machine comes complete with its own management console, both web-based and command-based, so the Linux operating system is not exposed to administrators. So it's a very simple solution to deploy and to manage and to update. Symantec 100% support the solution both in terms of hardware and software, including the operating system, so we are 100% the support provider. You'll see in some of the upper boxes in this diagram that we put on it the Veritas Storage Foundation, which is the Veritas Volume Manager and File System, which is an enterprise class storage management system. So that it means that it has a enterprise class file system for resiliency and for management purposes, so that we take advantage of that in a number of ways when we deploy the machine, or if we want to adjust the storage use on the machine afterwards. Then the top 2 boxes on the diagram here are that we have NetBackup, and NetBackup has it built into it deduplication, so that is the sort of software element of NetBackup. So if you were to purchase NetBackup as software, you get that NetBackup with intelligent deduplication layer. The other elements here are added value for the appliance deployment. The machine can be a VMware vSphere backup host, so that it can back up VMware virtual machines directly to the machine. So we have the integration built in with VMware for that. And on the left and right hand sides we have a couple of extra features. Symantec is a storage manager and a security company, and so we have some of our key security features on the machine. We harden the operating system in a number of ways by reducing the number of packages, so that critical packages that aren't required are not included. Services that are not needed to be run for a backup machine are not run, so that hardens the operating system. And on top of that we put our own critical system protection, which does intrusion detection as well onto the machine. And we have WAN optimization as a deduplication. Primarily the machines are deduplication solutions, and therefore one of the key use case is to replicate deduplicated data between data centers or between a remote office and a data center. Because the data is deduplicated, the backup stream over the network is deduplicated and works well over WANs. So because that's a useful and a popular deployment method, we have WAN optimization as well. So we optimize for to be able to fill high latency or sort of WAN links with maybe higher drop packet rates and things like that, so that we optimize so that we don't we can fill the WAN pipe bandwidth as efficiently as possible. So that's built into the solution as well. So when you purchase a NetBackup appliance, that is all those elements there are installed. They're all pre-configured, ready to go. The machine is pre-installed in our factory. The updates will take place of the whole solution as a single update. So a patch for any of those elements that needs patching is Symantec supplies the patch. And when we do an update to the software, and we recently had an update, which we'll talk about in a few seconds, then all those elements are updated in a single patch. So you're not having to integrate all those different elements where you have to install separate parts and make sure they're compatible, etc. None of that's required with the appliance approach. And the result of all that is that you get significant cost reductions. You can keep the machine current and up to date, which means you can back up the latest operating systems and applications without having to worry about updating something that hasn't been updated for a while because it didn't need to be, because the update process is very straightforward. So you're reducing risk by having the machine up to date and current, and you're reducing costs by having a much simpler upgrade and deployment process. So that's sort of describing the physically what you'd see inside the appliance, and on the left-hand side is actually what it looks like. Some black boxes which go into a standard 19-inch data center rack. Inside the box, this is actually what we actually supply. So the model we're currently shipping is the NetBackup 5230, and remember the NetBackup 5200 appliance series, but this is the current and latest model. We support up to 76 terabytes of capacity, and this is all the capacities we quote are usable. So that's after you take out the RAID overhead, you take out hot spare disks, which all the machines have. We take out the operating system space. So the numbers we quote here are the capacities you would see available for backup storage. So up to 76 terabytes, of which 72 terabytes we recommend is a maximum deduplication capacity, and that's after deduplication. So this could be protecting sort of half a petabyte is quite a typical capability for logically how much data you're protecting within that 72 terabytes. Machines are modular, so there's a 2U head unit which has 4 terabytes of storage, and then we can add 1 or 2 additional storage shelves, and those are 3U in size in the 19-inch rack, so that gives us a total either 5 or 8U. So in other words, that's how the capacity scales from 4 to 76 terabytes. And we can upgrade the machines after they've been bought, so they can be bought at 4 and then expanded up to maybe 40 and then to 76, for example. In NetBackup role terms, the machines can be a media server, which is a data mover and a storage node, or a master server, which is the main machine that keeps the NetBackup catalog and schedules all the NetBackup backup jobs, or it could be a combined role of media and master server in a single box. So it supports both those roles. The machine's sweet spot is really doing deduplication or storing deduplicated data, and we've got a number of innovative ways that deduplication is carried out, and in particular one of the most key benefits is that NetBackup fully supports client-based deduplication. So it's not a big overhead, but it gives you a huge benefit that the data that does not need to leave a client doesn't leave the client, so it runs on a much thinner infrastructure than you'd need if you were doing target-based deduplication, where you actually have to send all the backups to the backup store and then you deduplicate it on the store. So we can support both modes, but there's definitely big advantage of doing client deduplication. We'll see a couple of slides on that in a few minutes' time. So it supports all sort of modes of deduplication that you can use in the field. For the connectivity, the machine has 1 and 10 gigabit Ethernet connectivity. So if you're in a remote office, you might only have 1 gigabit. If you're in a data center deployment, 10 gigabit would probably be much more beneficial and more likely. So we support both of those connectivities, and we also support fiber channel. And for fiber channel, we do 3 things. Number one is we support tape out. So for storage up to 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, that can be on disk, and a good use case is that sort of storage being on a deduplicated disk storage, in other words, a NetBackup appliance. But if you wanted longer retention, 1 year, 7 year, 10 year, then you really are, it's much more cost effective to put that on tape. So the fiber channel we use for tape out, and we support a very wide range of tape drives and tape libraries with this machine. That's one use of fiber channel. We can also do backups inbound with fiber channel. So if you don't want to back up over the network, you can back up over fiber channel. That's possible. The machines support that. And one of the most innovative things with fiber channel is we support connectivity direct to VMware data stores. So if you have a VMware estate, data stores on fiber channel storage, we can directly connect those fiber channel data. We can do that directly off the data store, so you don't have to go through the network infrastructure. Everything is off-host as far as a VMware backup is concerned from the ESX service, so there's many benefits of that. And NetBackup and NetBackup Appliances support many different types of replication, and so, for example, a typical replication model is you store data, backup data, store it locally for a month, replicate it and store it on a remote site for a month, and then maybe send it off if it's an annual backup, maybe send it for tape for 7 years, for example, if it's a monthly if it's an annual full backup. And that's all supported by the appliance, and it's all automatically created as well under a policy direction. So replication is built into the appliances, and that replication can be over IP, and it can be over a different network from the backup network if that's what you need. And you can put windows onto that. So, for example, you could say, I'm going to do backup during the night, but I'm going to do replication during the early hours of the morning only, for example, to avoid, so that the replication window avoids the backup window, and maybe both of them need to avoid the online day transaction window. So you can control when the replication takes place, as well as its bandwidth and utilization. So that's in a sort of nutshell as to the actual sort of hardware you'd get inside a NetBackup appliance on slide 5. Just moving on to a little bit looking at the market. Some of you may be aware that we have NetBackup appliances, others may not be aware. Now, this chart here is it's a bit of an eye chart, but this is basically a report from IDC, which is a well-known consultancy reporting on IT developments, and they report on the number of and the amount of purpose-built backup appliances which are sold in the marketplace, and Gartner published a similar sort of table as well. So what this is showing is that even though NetBackup is quite recently in this market, we've been shipping appliances for about 3 years, we've reached about 10%, over 10% of market share. So we're behind EMC in terms of market share, but EMC is a company that's been operating in this world for many, many years. But we're a bit ahead of all the other competitors from the sort of standing start 3 years ago. And not only that, but so the revenue highlighted in yellow is our Q3 revenue, but the more important number perhaps is the 10% market share for Q3 last year now. These are the latest figures, and the growth of that revenue is 65%, so it's a huge amount of growth. And so although you may or may not be aware NetBackup have an appliance market and products, we are sort of a very sort of a compelling mover and shaker in that world. So this is just sort of illustrating with some independent figures exactly where we are in terms of our market penetration and our revenue growth. And we've sold a very large number of appliances in many, many markets, including the UK and others around the world. So that's slide 6. Slide 7 is this is talking about our support. Symantec is a software company, so we outsource the support to a well-known global hardware support partner, but we supply. But however, that's all hidden from our customers. So you're not requiring Symantec to turn up on site. We have a contract with a company who do this sort of thing for all sorts of companies globally, and they're very established and credible company. But anyway, we offer 24/7 support. The machines will call home. If a machine calls home with a hardware fault, then we'll automatically create a support case, and then we'll dispatch that to the hardware vendor, who will make an appointment to come in and replace the failed part. So that call home operation is it's done through a secure operations center, which is the same secure operations technology we use for our network monitoring, because Symantec is the world's largest monitor of global networks. So we use the same infrastructure to support the appliances as used for that. And then we have a portal called myappliance.com, which is off of the MySymantec web portal. So MySymantec is a web portal generally for customers to communicate with Symantec, and there's an appliance part of that. So you could assume, and if you set your machines to call home, then you can go to that portal and you can immediately see your machines, see what state they're in, hardware state, and you can see when they last called home. And if there are any cases open, you can see the cases that are open and drill down and see the status of the case. So you can get the current status. You can get oh, sorry, I've forgotten the word is now. There's a plan of action, so the POA, the plan of action as to what the support case's next step is, etc. So you get a very clear view of the current state of the hardware, so it's a very credible support sort of offering that Symantec has for these devices, and it's the equal of any other sort of call home style storage support vendor. So that's just, and anyway, that is called Symantec Auto Support, and it refers to the appliance hardware support. So that's slide 7. I mentioned earlier that the machine's sweet spot is doing deduplication. They don't only do deduplication; they don't have to do deduplication, but this is one of the things that they're mostly sort of found to be attractive to customers for. So this is a couple of slides on what NetBackup Deduplication actually does. So number one is we can do what we term end-to-end global deduplication, and that means that global deduplication, it doesn't matter where the client is. If it backs up to one of our deduplication stores, which would be on one of the appliances in an appliance deployment, wherever the client is, it will deduplicate its data against any other client that backs up to the same store. So that, in that terms, it's global. So if you've got 100 clients and the first client finds a file, and 99 clients later, the 100th client finds the same file, those files will be deduplicated together, even though they weren't on the same client. So, and that applies with client-based deduplication, where we actually deduplicate in the client, so the data never even left the client in the first place. So that is a big saving for your infrastructure as well. And you can see here that we sort of set out 4 ways to do deduplication. Number 1 is we do it in the client. Number 2 is we do it in a backup server, a media server, and that could be a media server you deploy yourself, or it could be a media server that's deployed as a NetBackup appliance, so we can do the deduplication there as well. And we can also do deduplication on targets as well, and that can be set up. And it's all the same software stack that's doing this. It doesn't matter where the deduplication happens. Data that's deduplicated in one place will be deduplicated against the same data if it appears, even though it was discovered in another place. So it doesn't matter where the deduplication takes place. And this is all done by policy. So your policy might be, my Windows servers in this backup policy all dedupe in the client. That might be the general policy, and then for a particular client you might have an exception for some particular reason because you didn't want to, you wanted to deduplicate it somewhere else. It doesn't matter. It's the same policy. It's just a slight variation. All this, and it's the same, in exactly the same format, so that it doesn't matter where it was duplicated or where it's stored, it will still be deduplicated. So that's a very powerful message, and you can compare this, for example, with solely a target-based deduplication solution. You have to get the data to the target before you can deduplicate, so you need more bandwidth, and you need to handle more data out to the client. You need more bandwidth in your organization, and that data will only deduplicate on that target. If you were doing deduplication somewhere else, it wouldn't deduplicate the data on that target. If you have a deduplication solution that can only do target deduplication. But NetBackup and NetBackup Appliances can do deduplication anywhere. So that's the message on slide 9. I won't spend a lot of time on slide 10, but this is showing an example on the left-hand side of a conventional backup solution where the client's back up to a backup server. That backup server moves the data to a deduplication device. That's in the middle of the left-hand side. And you have to send all the data through the backup server and all the data to the deduplication device before the deduplication takes place. If you can compare that with a NetBackup appliance solution, we just run the backup client. That does a deduplication, and on the right-hand side, the dotted line is showing a deduplicated backup stream moving to the appliance. So you've got much less data moving. You've got much lower footprint in your environment. There is no separate backup server. The dedupe device and the backup server are the same machine. So you don't send so much data, and you don't have to have so much infrastructure to move the data, and you don't have to have much infrastructure in terms of servers to actually store and transmit the data. And there's an example in the numbers below, which, for example, spread over a 1 year, 1 year's a weekly full backups, then it would be 72% less data moving for your infrastructure in that example. So that's an example of client-based deduplication has some real tangible benefits in your environment. So that's slide 10. Slide 11 also looks a little bit more at our intelligent deduplication. This is in NetBackup's general deduplication capability. What we're doing is, because NetBackup is doing the deduplication and it understands exactly what is in the backup stream, we actually look inside the backup stream and we see individual files, we see individual database objects, and that means that we can do our deduplication based on an individual file inside of a backup stream. And that's the left-hand side is illustrating that. This shows the comparison with a traditional target-based deduplication solution where you send all the data in the backup as a single large lump of data, and then you attempt to deduplicate it when it arrives at the target. And the target doesn't really know what was in, well, in fact, it doesn't know at all what was in the backup, so it can't see where the individual files were. So it's making a guess at a best fit deduplication algorithm to try and deduplicate that as well as possible. And generally speaking, you can't guess what type of data is in a backup if you don't know about the backup. And so the deduplication rates are either lower, or you need an awful lot more power to generate the deduplication, or both things happen. So the upshot is that we get for a very small amount of overhead, we get a very high deduplication rate compared with alternative solutions. And that particularly applies for virtual machines, because we can open up virtual machines when we're backing them up, and we see the individual files, so our deduplication is much better for that single reason. We can do file and block-based deduplications, and we also skip white space. So if we see a machine is only 50% full of data, the actual virtual disk file, we would immediately discard 50% of the data because there was no actual data there to actually back up, which a target-based solution typically can't make that decision, and so has to back up all the data. So that's a few words on deduplication, and that applies whether NetBackup is deployed in an appliance or a non-appliance, but it's certainly a big benefit for the appliances. So that was slide 11. Here's a few examples of where the appliance could be used to address service levels, so recovery points and recovery time objectives here, for example. So we have a feature on the left-hand side called auto-image replication. This is the ability to replicate data between independent backup domains, so independent backup environments. So the master server, which is the brains of the operation, there'll be one on two sites, maybe one on a production site, one on a DR site, and we can replicate backups between them. So if there's a DR event, then on the DR site, we can immediately restore backups of clients that are on the production site without having to stand up a new server, without having to look at the catalog and find out where the backups were. It's immediately ready to do restores. So that's a feature of auto-image replication, which the appliances fully support, and that's a fantastic benefit for DR. We have a feature called NetBackup Accelerator, which support on appliances, where we just back up the new data that's being created on a server, and we immediately get that list from, for examples, by using the Windows Change Journal on Windows. We only need to send the change data, but in the background on the appliance we're creating a full backup. So the upshot of that is that a much faster backup solution and a faster recovery time. So that's the NetBackup Accelerator feature. We do bare metal recovery, so the machines can recover servers from bare metal, and in fact in NetBackup 7.6 we can do a bare metal recovery, a bare metal backup, and we can recover to a VMware machine as well, so we can do physical to virtual sort of as part of a backup and recovery process, which is a very good solution for testing the DR test, for example. And I mentioned we have WAN optimization. So these are features which address recovery point and recovery time objectives, which are key to meeting modern backup SLAs. On slide 14, this is a little bit more about where appliances can be used to protect environments. So, for example, if you need to protect remote offices and branch offices, there's a number of things we can do, but a small appliance can be quickly deployed, quickly, easily updated in a remote office. It can replicate data to a data center away from the remote office, so you can get data offsite quickly. So that's a very quick way, an easy way to get remote office protection SLAs up. You can completely eliminate tapes in remote offices, for example. We have very, very powerful features for backup of virtual machines, so we do physical and virtual machines equally well. You'll see the marketing term VRAY used sometimes by Symantec. The VRAY refers to our ability to look inside virtual machines and do very clever things with their backup, including, for example, very good dedupe rates and the ability to do a single pass backup of a virtual machine, but restore individual files and individual database objects. So, for example, we can do a virtual machine backup back up the virtual machine at the virtual machine layer very fast because it's a single backup, and yet we can catalog in there files, and we can catalog it even down to individual SharePoint objects and restore just individual objects out of that backup, even though it was a virtual machine level backup in the first place. The appliances support tape, as I mentioned. We also support a thing called an advanced disk, which is a non-deduplication disk. So we can support deduplication disk or non-deduplicated disk, and we also can act as a gateway to the cloud. So we can go to those cloud vendors there. So the machine can be a gateway to those cloud services. So those cloud services are presented as a storage unit, a bit like a very smart tape, into the backup environment. So you can quickly get data backed up to the cloud, and then you can restore it somewhere else. So that's a key feature, and that's included with the NetBackup appliance. And you can have solutions that the last panel on the right-hand side is you can have solutions that remove the need for tapes, or perhaps you still have tapes, but they stay in the library on a DR site. They don't need to be put in on trucks. You don't need to spend money for someone to collect tapes weekly from a data center, daily from a data center. So that can be a big cost saving as well, whilst giving you still a very high level of DR protection and a very simple way to do DR testing as well. You can do DR testing just by recovering a machine, seeing if the services work. You don't have to get tapes, send them, stand up a server, read the tapes, find out if recover a machine, find out if it works. You can do DR much more smartly than that. I mentioned earlier that the current version of NetBackup is version 7.6. That is the equivalent NetBackup on the appliance is called 2.6, but it is the same NetBackup software version. It's just that the 2.6 number just implies certain things in terms of the versions of the other appliance features like call home and configuration, alerting and things. And that's got a bunch of new features. So we introduced a new machine at 14 terabytes capacity at a very attractive price point. So that's an ideal machine for a small or a system, maybe going a large remote office or a small enterprise, perhaps a 14 terabyte machine. So that's at a particularly attractive price point. That's a new machine. We also did a considerable amount of maintenance on an updating of the user interface and the installation process on the appliances specifically, so that to reduce installation time and to reduce the chance of any issues with configurations. We've got a very powerful health checker system which was improved in this release, and we increased the dedupe store size. We recommend up to 72 terabytes. Actually, it's supported more than that, but 72 terabytes is a good sweet spot. And the dedupe engine was radically overhauled, and so out of that we've had about a 30% increase in deduplication forms for this release of software. So if you have an appliance deployment today running previous release, then it's very well worthwhile looking at to upgrade. If nothing else, the performance increase should be significant and well worthwhile. So that's some of the newer features that have been deployed on the NetBackup appliances recently. And then on slide 21, there's a little bit more detail on what's inside the machine. So I'll just sort of go through this quickly. I mentioned earlier that the machines have a 76 terabyte capacity. Actually, you can get to 86 terabytes if you want to, so that's a possibility. Also, the machines are a current generation industry standard server under the covers, so there's there's dual hex-core Intel processors, and everything except the smallest machine ships 128 gigabytes of RAM. So these machines are fast, and I haven't mentioned any benchmark figures, but our own benchmarks are that even a 2U box optimized for client deduplication, we can protect up to 40 terabytes an hour of is the maximum throughput speed, or logically we're protecting 40 terabytes of data per hour, which is a huge backup rate. Now it's really unlikely you'd be able to do that in many environments, but it is technically possible, and part of that's because of the client deduplication, and the other part is due to it is a powerful machine. But in a backup world, if you need to meet tight SLAs, it's unlikely that the appliance will be the backup bottleneck. The likelihood is that it will go as fast as your infrastructure will allow it to go. I mentioned that it can be a media and master server, and we do deduplication in various places. Replication is built in, and we have a number of different ways to do replication, which I won't go into details, but under the cover, the NetBackup has a number of replication features, and we support all those with appliances. And I mentioned earlier that we have the connectivity, which is reiterated here, and you can have up to 10 8-gig fiber channel ports, so that you can have huge fiber channel throughput on the machines. Finally, in terms of the what we actually sell, this chart here is a rather complicated chart here, but it really simplifies down to this is actually what we sell as an appliance. So the columns show the different storage capacities, and the rows show the different I/O configurations. Now, I wouldn't worry about the I/O configurations; they are possibly a bit difficult to read. But basically, there are 5 I/O configurations with combinations of 1 and 10 gigabit Ethernet and 8 gigabit fiber channel. So there's 5 of those configurations, which are the rows, and then there's 5 storage points, which are the 4, 14, 28, 40, and 76 terabytes of usable data in the columns. And each one of those is orderable as a single SKU. And that SKU includes support, and that support can be for 1 or 3 years, and we can supply up to 5 years support. We can do hardware support based on the SKU includes hardware support. That hardware support can be 4-hour response time, or it can be a next business day response time. And if you wish, and you're in a sensitive area or market, then you can also have a non-return disk. So if a disk fails, we don't require it back, so it can be destroyed on your site according to your processes. So those are all standard parts. So a single order can produce one of those machines with NetBackup fully installed, ready to be deployed inside an environment. You really only have to give it some network information, tell it its role, and then it's ready to do backups, and you can download the clients direct from the web GUI on the appliance. So that's sort of an idea of the range of the machine, and also the simplicity. Also, I haven't spelled it out on these slides here, but the machines, you can use the existing NetBackup licenses. So unlike certain other deployments, so for example, if you buy a Windows server or a laptop, for example, the laptop comes with Windows, for example, that Windows license dies when the laptop dies. You can't transfer that license. You have to buy it. You effectively buy that license again. With NetBackup licenses are perpetual, so the software licenses are perpetual. So if you've got existing NetBackup software licenses and you transfer from an existing server to an appliance, you can move the existing licenses. Provided they're on support, you're entitled to have the current version. That means you can apply the current version that would run on the appliance, and it also means that the features you've got currently licensed, you can operate on the appliance with no additional software cost. So if you look at the cost of life, the lifecycle costs of a backup solution, then one of the things to bear in mind is there are no recurring software costs related to the hardware. So we don't have there's no cost for the operating system. There's no cost for the specific features on the hardware. And again, that's different from many other backup solutions you may look to do. For example, many other vendors do charge for their operating system on their device. They charge for replication and some other things as well. So if you're looking at the lifecycle costs, then that's something to bear in mind. So that's it really. If we just to sum it up, NetBackup is a very capable software platform with a very large amount of agents and features for support of all sorts of different backup requirements. We can back up to any type of storage, and that could be an appliance, it could be disk storage you provision, or it could be tape. So it's a very flexible product it's all in one software product, so your investment in training and software licenses is leveraged over however you deploy the NetBackup. So it's a very, very attractive, and it's been very popular addition to the sort of Symantec portfolio for NetBackup in particular, and we've had a lot of success with it, and we've a very large number of happy and satisfied customers. So with that, I'll hand over to Helen, and if any questions, we'll answer those after.
Thanks very much. So we've got about 10 minutes left, so if anyone has any questions, please do type them in the box, and we can ask Andrew while he's online. No, we don't seem to have any questions at the moment. We'll just give it another minute or so. Okay, we've got one here from Gerard. So what is a typical cost compared to own the server solutions?
Oh, that's a good question. It's hard to say exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, Symantec as a hardware platform, and through Bytes, won't be the cheapest ever piece of hardware. You will buy the same hardware at lower costs if you went direct to, for a non sort of appliance form factor. So you need to sort of do your own analysis as to the difference and how it benefits you. You're not a system integrator. You don't have to install software. You don't have to work out, well, is the operating system compatible with the drivers, the HBAs, the tape drives, the application patches, and other elements of the solution. All that is removed, and all that issue is removed for the life cycle of the project. So the answer is yes, it will be a bit more expensive. It will be a few tens of %, I'd guess, if you were to put a number on it, something like that. But you, against that, for a one-off hardware cost, you're saving a large amount of system engineer time over the life cycle of the solution. So it's hard to put a number on it, but with customers and buy, to get an ROI of an appliance type solution. So we can certainly do that, but it's hard to put an exact number on it. And also, if you are comparing like with like, and make sure it is an apples to apples comparison. So these are the latest generation Intel servers. It's the current and latest generation LSI logic type disk storage arrays with multiple storage controllers, etc. RAID 6. These are they're enterprise style disks. They're not they're not the sort of commercial and retail type disks. So it is not a sort of a bargain basement hardware. The hardware is proper engineered data center hardware. So when you're doing a comparison, you do need to sort of take that into account.
Perfect, thanks Andrew. So Gerald, we can definitely help you with that. We can get in touch. So just a question from Mark now. We are currently running 4 5220 appliances. What are the likely lifespans for these devices?
Oh, that's a good question, Mark. Right, well, the software stack is supported going forwards. Normally speaking, we after the end of sale of a particular appliance model, the 5220 became end of sale at I think in the middle of last year or the autumn of last year, 2003. We normally warrant that we will support that hardware for 5 years from that point. So I would say you've got about 4.5 years. So in broad terms, if you go to our website, and I don't know the answer to this, but it does show you if you go to the website under the support section and look at release details, it does have a separate life cycle expectations for hardware and software. So it's at least 5 years after you will have purchased the machine. and currently for that model I think it's 4.5 years from memory, and it's at least that period, it's maybe more as well. And then during that time you may need to upgrade the software stack a bit, because the software stack may have a different life, end of life, but it will be at least 5 years. And also I mentioned a few bits and pieces here to do with the NetBackup 2.6 release, which is the current release for the 5230. That also supports the 5220, and it supports the previous model to that, the 5200 as well. So you get the software benefits, and that includes an increased dedupe size on that model, as well as what I would think is a reasonably long product life.
Perfect, thanks Andrew. So are there any more questions, anybody? Okay, another question. Can you upgrade the hardware on the appliance?
Yes, indeed we can. We can add storage trays, so you can start with 4 and add another, for example, 36, go to 40, and that could be done on demand at some future point in the life cycle of that box. And then we could do it again, because currently we support 2 storage trays, so you could have a second upgrade for storage. And I showed you on that chart there, so those upgrades, storage upgrades are allowed on the hardware. And I showed on the chart there were a whole bunch of different I/O options, and you can also move between any one I/O option to any other I/O option. So, for example, if you started off with just 1 gig and 2 10 gigs, and you then later needed 4 10 gigs and some fiber channel because you're going to do tape out or you want to talk to a VMware data store, then that upgrade of I/O is also supported. So yes, you can upgrade hardware in terms of storage and I/O options.
Perfect. And just another question from Gerard. NetBackup 7.6 integrates with NetApp hardware. I assume the same functionality with appliances?
Yes, it does. That's correct. There's various things we can do in terms of NetApp. So yes, it's the same software stack. So there's 1 or 2 things the appliances don't do that you can't do that you can do if you have your own hardware. But there's not many. There's very few actually, and filled out on our compatibility list. But in terms, we have the same NetApp support. That's correct. Yes, for NDMP backups, etc.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there any more questions? I'll just give it another minute or so. Just to let you know as well, we will send across the recording for today's webinar so you can have a listen, or if you do have any other questions, once you've hung up, please feel free to get in touch and we can come back to you with a response. Wonderful. So I think that concludes everything. Thanks again everyone for joining, and I hope you have a very good afternoon, and thanks Andrew.